The empty basket. Gratitude and thankfulness as having now. In a village that could have been yesterday or 100 years from now, there lived a woman named Mara who carried an empty basket everywhere she went. Not a broken basket, not a forgotten basket, a strong, woven basket, clean as river reeds and stubbornly empty. When neighbours asked why she carried it, Mara would lift her chin and say, "So I don't forget what I lack." She meant it as truth, and she said it so often that the words began to feel like a rule of nature. At dawn, she would pass the baker and smell warm bread, then glance into her basket and feel the small sting of nothingness. At midday, she would pass the smith and see bright tools, then glance into her basket and feel the heat of wanting. At night, she would sit at her table, listen to the wind, and imagine a life that fit her better than the one she wore. Mara believed she was being practical. She believed her empty basket kept her motivated. But the village did not change around her, and her days did not soften, and her wants did not arrive. One morning, when fog lay like a blanket over the fields, Mara found an old man kneeling beside the road, pressing seeds into the soil with careful fingers. He wore no sign of belonging, no family crest, no merchant colours, only simple cloth and a face as calm as pond water. Mara paused because the seeds were strange. They looked like ordinary kernels, yet the old man treated each as if it were gold. He covered them gently, patted the earth, and whispered something that sounded like gratitude. Mara cleared her throat. "You're planting in the road." The old man did not look up. "No, I'm planting in the soil beside it." "That soil is hard," Mara said. "Nothing grows there." The old man finally looked at her and smiled as if she'd offered him a useful piece of news. "Hard soil grows hard results," he said. "Soft soil grows soft results." Mara lifted her empty basket a little, like proof. "Then I must have hard soil." The old man's gaze slid to the basket. "That basket is not empty." Mara almost laughed. "Look!" "Nothing." The old man nodded, as if he agreed with her, but not with her conclusion. "You are carrying a picture of nothing." Mara didn't like the way that sounded. "I carry what's true," she said. The old man brushed soil from his hands. "Truth is not only what your eyes report." He tapped his chest lightly. "Truth is also what you impress in here, by what you feel you have now." Mara frowned. "Feel I have? If I don't have it, I don't have it." The old man stood and stretched his back. "Then you will keep having that." Something in Mara tightened. "I've worked," she said quickly. "I've tried." The old man's voice stayed gentle. "This is not about trying harder." He motioned toward the fields. "It is about fertilizing." He began walking, and without knowing why, Mara followed. They moved past hedges and stones until they reached a small plot of land behind a leaning fence. The old man opened the gate as if it had been waiting for him. Inside the fence were 3 garden beds. One bed was lush with green leaves and small blossoms. Another bed was thin and patchy, with stalks that looked uncertain about continuing. The third bed was bare. its dirt cracked like old pottery. Mara pointed at the bare bed. "That one looks like my life." The old man didn't argue. "Tell me what you do each day." Mara, relieved to talk about effort, listed her routines: early work, careful spending, watching others, measuring herself against what they had. "And every time I see someone with what I want," she finished, "I feel behind." The old man nodded again. "And then?" "And then I push myself," Mara said. "I criticize my situation so I won't get lazy." The old man crouched and ran his fingers through the cracked soil. "You are fertilizing with irritation." Mara's mouth opened, then shut. Irritation felt justified. It felt honest. But looking at the cracked soil, it also felt familiar. The old man stood. "There is a fertilizer that loosens soil without forcing it." "What fertilizer?" Mara asked, though she already suspected he would say something she didn't like. He smiled. "Gratitude." Mara made a sound that was almost a scoff and almost a sigh. "How can I be grateful for what I don't have? Is less than #0. 7# is greater than." The old man's eyes did not sharpen, and that somehow made Mara feel more exposed. "Gratitude and thankfulness," he said, "is the feeling of having now." He pointed to Mara's empty basket. "You keep practicing the feeling of not having now." Mara wanted to argue, but her arguments felt thin in the presence of the garden beds. The lush bed didn't look lucky. It looked tended. It looked like someone had been consistent about what they fed it. The old man walked to the lush bed and plucked a small tomato from a vine. "When I feel thankful for what is, I am telling the deeper part of me, I have." He placed the tomato in Mara's basket. It looked startling there, one bright red thing in a sea of nothing. Mara stared at it, then looked up. "But you do have this." "Yes," he said, "and I am thankful for it." Then he reached into a pocket and pulled out a tiny folded cloth, empty, and held it like a treasure. "And I am also thankful for what is in my imagination." Mara's throat tightened again, this time with confusion. "You're thankful for pretend?" The old man shook his head. "Not pretend. Vibration." He tapped the soil. "This soil responds to what is put in it." He tapped Mara's chest. "So does this." Mara stared at the 3 beds as if they might answer her. The old man said, "I will give you 3 practices, not as decoration, as instructions." He held up one finger. "First, find something good about a situation." End quote. Mara started to protest, but he continued. "Not because the situation is perfect, because it gives you feedback about what you've been cultivating inside. Be thankful for the message." He held up a second finger. "Second, deal with situations without getting negatively, emotionally involved." Mara's eyebrows rose. "So be a doormat?" The old man's smile returned. "No. Act on the outside if action is needed, but keep your inner soil clean." He held up a third finger. "Third, shift your mind to a thought-feeling image that feels good." "Even when appearances say otherwise?" Mara asked. Especially then, the old man said softly. Otherwise you keep planting appearances. Mara looked down at her basket again. One tomato didn't make her rich, but it made the emptiness feel less like a law and more like a habit. The old man opened his hand. In his palm were 3 small stones, each etched with a simple mark. These are for 7 days, he said. Not because 7 is magic, because repetition is how soil changes. He placed the first stone in Mara's hand. Each day, name 3 things you are grateful for. Mara blinked. 3? Yes. Small counts. Toothbrush counts. Working sink counts. He placed the second stone in her hand. Each day, take 1 person or situation that hooks you into irritation. Instead of feeding irritation, find a way to see what it is showing you. Eat. If you can't find gratitude, turn your mind away. He placed the third stone in her hand. Each day, notice where you reacted. Write what else you could have chosen. Then rate yourself at night, not to punish, to measure what you are fertilizing. Mara held the stones, feeling their weight like responsibility and like possibility. Why would this change anything? She asked, quieter now. The old man gestured toward the cracked bed. Because what you repeatedly impress becomes what grows. And gratitude is the feeling of having now. Mara left the garden with a tomato in her basket and 3 stones in her pocket. On the path home, she passed the baker again. She smelled bread, glanced into her basket, and started to feel the old sting until she remembered the first practice. She found something good. Not big, not flashy, just true. I can smell this, she thought. I can walk here. She surprised herself by feeling a small warmth in her chest, like soil loosening. That evening, she wrote 3 things in a scrap journal. My legs, my neighbour's laugh, the tomato. The next day, her roof leaked during a brief storm, and Mara felt irritation rise like a spark in dry grass. Her mouth formed the beginning of a complaint. Then she stopped. She stood in the doorway, watching the drip, and tried the first practice again. Something good. She didn't want to lie to herself, so she kept it simple. I have a roof, odor. Then she tried the second practice. She dealt with it without drowning in it. She fetched a bucket, placed it under the drip, and felt oddly proud that her mind hadn't become a storm too. On the 3rd day, she saw a neighbour ride by in a cart with a new lantern, bright glass, polished metal, the kind Mara had wanted for months. Envy rose fast, hot and automatic. Her empty basket felt heavy again. Mara stopped walking right there in the road. She remembered the old man's warning. What she chose inside would affect her, not the neighbour. So she tried something that felt almost impossible. She looked at the lantern and said quietly, I'm glad that exists in my world. At first it sounded fake. Then she added, if it can come to him, it can come to me. Something shifted tiny, but real, as if a knot loosened in her chest. That night, she wrote her 3 things again, and added 1 more line. I didn't feed envy. By the 5th day, something else began happening. Her mind, which used to search for proof of lack, started noticing proof of support. A stranger held a gate open for her. A friend offered extra herbs from their garden without being asked. Even the sun looked different, not brighter exactly, but more welcomed. Still, the old habit didn't surrender easily. On the 6th day, Mara overheard 2 people speaking sharply about her in the market. Small accusations, careless words. Her face flushed. The urge to snap back surged through her body. She felt the hook. She nearly bit. Then she remembered the 3rd practice. Shift to a thought-feeling image that felt good, ignoring appearances. Mara turned away, not as surrender, but as choice. She pictured herself walking through the village with her basket full, not just full of food or coins, but full of ease. She imagined a day where she was treated kindly, where things flowed smoothly, where her chest stayed soft. Then she did something surprising. She felt thankful, as if that ease were happening now. The heat in her face cooled. She went home and wrote, "I stayed in neutral. I kept my inner soil clean." On the 7th day, Mara returned to the old man's garden behind the leaning fence. She expected to feel proud, or maybe disappointed, that her life hadn't completely transformed overnight. Instead, she felt something steadier. Peace, like a hand on her shoulder. The old man was there, of course, kneeling beside the beds. He looked up and said, "Show me your basket." Mara held it out. Inside were not riches, not miracles, not a sudden flood of everything she'd ever wanted. But there was bread the baker had given her at a discount, because you always speak kindly. There were herbs her friend insisted she take. There was a folded cloth-wrapped candle gifted by the lantern owner who said, "I thought of you." Mara stared at it all and felt her eyes sting. "Did I attract this?" she whispered. The old man didn't answer like a judge. He answered like a gardener. "You fertilized." Mara swallowed. "But what about the bigger things? The life I actually dream about?" The old man nodded toward the bare bed. "Has the soil changed in 7 days?" Mara looked closely. The cracks were still there, but less severe. The dirt looked darker, less brittle. "It's different," she admitted. "It took time to harden," the old man said. "It takes time to soften." "But now," he added, "you know what to feed." Mara thought of her old basket habit, how she'd carried emptiness like a prayer in reverse. She reached into her pocket and touched the 3 stones. They felt smoother than before, not because they'd changed, but because her hands had. "What do I do when I slip?" Mara asked. "When irritation comes back?" The old man smiled. "Return to what feels good. If you cannot find something good, turn your mind away. Then choose again." Mara nodded slowly, as if nodding could plant the lesson deeper. She looked at the lush bed and understood something she had missed for years. The garden didn't grow because the gardener begged it to grow. It grew because the gardener kept feeding the soil what matched growth. Mara lifted her basket, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like a promise, something meant to be filled, yes, but also something meant to be carried with gratitude even before it was full. As she walked back through the village, she passed the baker and smiled, not because she was forcing cheer, but because she felt the warmth of having now spread through her chest. She passed the smith and admired the shine of his tools with a simple thought, I'm glad that exists. And when she caught herself searching for what was missing, she shifted her mind to the image of what she wanted and felt thankful as if she were living it already. The basket swung at her side, no longer empty in meaning, even when it was empty in fact. Because Mara had learned the quiet secret of fertile soil. Gratitude is not the reward at the end of having. It is the fertilizer at the beginning.